On September 8, 2012, Shelley Lietz was returning home from an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. The past few months had been a period of recovery for her. She was finally overcoming her addiction and gradually returning to a normal life. As she approached her house, she noticed Macy's car in the driveway. Macy was her son Derek's girlfriend and the mother of their 1-year-old child. The front door was open, which Shelley found strange. Upon entering, Shelley was struck by an unusual silence. In the living room, she saw what appeared to be blood trails leading to the bathroom. The bathroom door was locked, but blood was seeping underneath it. At that moment, Shelley's heart clenched with terror. She feared her son might have harmed himself, or, even worse, his little boy. When Shelley managed to open the bathroom door, a horrifying scene confronted her. Macy was lying in the bathtub with a serious neck injury. In desperation, Shelley began searching the house for her grandson while simultaneously calling the police. But neither little Gabriel nor Derek was anywhere to be found. This tragedy was the culmination of a long history of warning signs that had haunted the Lietz family for years. Derek Lietz's story is a tale of how a childhood full of indulgence and lack of boundaries can lead to catastrophic consequences. Derek Campos Lietz was born on November 13, 1991. His mother Shelley was only 19 years old, still in college, and had absolutely no plans to become a mother at such a young age. The child's father refused any responsibility, leaving Shelley alone with the heavy burden of single motherhood. The months of pregnancy were filled with anxiety and worry for Shelley. She couldn't imagine how she would provide for the child she was carrying. However, when Derek was born, and she held him in her arms, Shelley felt peace. At that moment, she vowed to herself that she would do everything possible to ensure her son had a good life. Fate had another trial in store for the young mother. When Derek was just 7 weeks old, he became seriously ill. The baby cried continuously, and the concerned Shelley took him to the hospital. Doctors diagnosed the infant with a respiratory illness caused by severe pneumonia. Derek's condition was critical, and he was urgently transported by helicopter to a specialized hospital in Duluth, Minnesota. Upon arrival at the hospital, the attending physician told Shelley that he couldn't guarantee her son's survival due to his extremely serious condition. At this moment, Shelley began to pray and made a promise to herself. If her son survived, she would make him the happiest boy in the world. Derek survived. After this frightening experience, Shelley became an extremely caring and loving mother. According to those close to her, she gave Derek practically everything he asked for and fulfilled all his wishes. Such upbringing, of course, spoiled the boy, and as we know, this rarely ends well. Derek's childhood was described by those around him as normal, but as the boy grew older, he began to exhibit abnormal behavior. He became an aggressive child who wouldn't take no for an answer. Once, Shelley and Derek were at a supermarket. Passing the toy section, the boy asked his mom to buy him a toy he liked. That day, Shelley was counting every dollar and told her son that she couldn't buy the toy now, but promised to come back for it another day. Hearing this, Derek flew into a rage. He grabbed the desired toy and broke it. Then he took another identical toy, the one he had just damaged, and told his mother that if she didn't buy it, he would break this one too. Shelley gave in to her son's demand and later admitted that she had never before seen such a hateful look in Derek's eyes. Over the years, Derek's behavior became increasingly unusual. Unlike other children, he didn't like touching food with his hands, even if it was pizza, French fries, or a sandwich. He ate exclusively with a fork and knife. The boy also didn't enjoy playing with other children, and sometimes even showed aggression toward those who tried to approach him. Even Derek's manner of playing with toys was strange. He would line up all his toys in front of him in a very organized order. Then he would step back a few meters and observe them for some time. He would only touch the toys to put them away. Derek also communicated very little with adults other than his mother. Once, Shelley's friend came to visit and tried to talk to Derek, but the boy simply ignored her with an irritated expression. This same friend brought her son, a boy about Derek's age. When the child tried to play with Derek and took one of the toys lined up in a row, Derek pushed him and then began to hit him. Shelley and her friend witnessed this scene and quickly pulled Derek away, who even attempted to bite his own mother. When Derek was about 7 or 8 years old, Shelley met a man named Robert, with whom she began a relationship. One day, Robert came to Shelley's home to meet Derek, and this meeting was described as very strange. Robert was known for his playful character and tried to play with Derek, but the boy completely ignored him. Although Robert realized at that moment that Derek wasn't an ordinary child, he still continued trying to interact with him. At one point, Robert began playing with the boy's hair, examining his scalp as if looking for something. Seeing this, Shelley asked Robert what he was doing, to which he smilingly replied that he was just looking for the number 666. Shelley didn't quite understand and was a bit confused, so Robert told her to relax as he was only joking. Later, Shelley understood what Robert was hinting at. The relationship between Robert and Shelley developed, and eventually they decided to get married. After the wedding, they began living together, and Robert started caring for Derek as his own son. Until then, Shelley had not established any limits for her son, and Derek mostly did whatever he wanted. Robert understood that this was extremely harmful to the child, and having become part of the family, decided to intervene. He began setting limits and rules for Derek, which the boy was completely unaccustomed to. On their first Christmas together, Robert woke up early, arranged presents under the tree, prepared a big breakfast, and waited for Shelley and Derek to wake up so they could all enjoy what he had prepared. However, as soon as Shelley and Derek woke up, Derek immediately ran to the tree to open his Christmas presents. Shelley had promised her son that she would give him a video game, so Derek could barely wait to enjoy this gift. But now there were rules in the house, and Robert told Derek that he could only open presents after breakfast. Robert wanted this Christmas to be special, as it was the first Christmas that he, Shelley, and Derek were spending together. He wanted everyone to sit at the table and enjoy the big breakfast he had prepared, talking as families typically do. Derek didn't accept this and told Robert that he wasn't hungry and wanted to open presents first. Robert was adamant and said it wasn't possible, and if Derek didn't eat breakfast, he wouldn't be allowed to open any presents that day. This was a type of behavior that Shelley had never demonstrated. She didn't intervene, just observed. She knew that what Robert was doing was best for raising Derek. Derek sat at the table but just stared at the food and didn't eat anything. Robert continued telling the boy that he could open presents only if he ate. After a few minutes, Robert and Shelley finished eating, but Derek still hadn't touched his plate. They got up from the table and began clearing up, leaving only Derek's plate. Hours passed, night fell, and Derek continued to sit there, not eating and not opening presents. Seeing that her son wasn't going to eat anything, Shelley told him to go to bed. The next day, when Robert left early for work, Shelley, taking advantage of her husband's absence, decided to give in to her son's whim and gave him the present she had bought for him. When Derek opened the present, he saw it was a video game, but he didn't even say thank you or show any reaction. Instead of playing and enjoying his gift, he simply took it, climbed onto the couch and threw it with all his might, breaking the device. After this, Derek slowly went back to his room, as if he wasn't concerned at all about possible consequences. Shelley was very shocked and began to cry. When she calmed down, she took the device, put it back in the box, and returned to the store where she had bought it. She told one of the employees that there had been a problem during transportation, and the device wasn't working. This way, Shelley received a new video game, and when she returned home, she gave it to Derek, who this time didn't break it. Robert never found out about this. Some people who followed the case said that Shelley did this because she loved her son, but also because she was very afraid of him. When Derek became a teenager, his behavior worsened, and the situation in the family home became increasingly unbearable. Derek only wanted to lock himself in his room, and every time Robert tried to get through to him, Derek argued, yelled, and cursed. They never entered into physical conflicts, but the arguments were so intense that it seemed like the situation could get out of control at any moment. Shelley felt completely helpless in all of this. She watched every argument and felt powerless. Shelley was very saddened by what was happening. She loved both her son and her husband, and felt that at any moment this could lead to the family's breakdown. At first, Shelley didn't intervene, but later began trying to calm the situation. Although more often than not, she took Derek's side, even when he was completely wrong. This led to the deterioration of her marriage with Robert, until the moment came when Robert could no longer bear it. He filed for divorce and left the home. Over time, Derek's behavior didn't change. He didn't make friends, didn't like to communicate with anyone, and just wanted to stay at home in his room. Shelley decided to take her son to a psychologist to find out if a specialist could help in any way. The psychologist who evaluated Derek concluded that he was suffering from depression and prescribed treatment, which Derek followed for a short period of time. In 2009, shortly before Derek turned 18, he met a girl named Macy, who was 16 at the time. Macy was very different from Derek. She was an extrovert, full of life, had many friends, and loved going outside. She was his complete opposite. Nevertheless, they got along well and began dating. Derek even changed his behavior after he started dating Macy. He began to smile, was affectionate with his girlfriend, became more sociable, and even started following some rules at home. He even told Macy that he loved her, something he had never said to his mother. Whenever Shelley told her son that she loved him, he would just remain silent and not respond. Shelley was very happy about her son's relationship. For her, Macy complimented Derek, filling what he lacked. Shelley believed that her son would finally start behaving like a normal person and live a normal life, but she was completely wrong. In the first year of their relationship, Derek told his mother that Macy was pregnant. Shelley was very happy about the news, despite the fact that the couple was very young and had no means to raise a child. She even offered her son to have Macy move in with them. At this time, neither Derek nor Macy had yet finished high school. They also didn't have jobs. As a result, Macy accepted her mother-in-law's invitation and moved in with Derek. At first, everything went well. The family seemed very close-knit, and they even got a Labrador named Lucy. The following year, in 2010, Derek graduated from high school, and his son with Macy was born. They named the boy Gabriel, who was born healthy and was warmly welcomed by the family. Macy still needed to finish her last year of high school, and when she returned to school after giving birth, Derek took care of his son most of the time. Derek was considered an excellent father. He was attentive, affectionate, and very loving with Gabriel. Derek cooked, played with the baby, changed diapers, and did everything without complaint, which was hard to believe given his behavior and personality throughout his life. However, soon after the child turned 1 year old, Derek began gradually returning to his former self. He began establishing rules in the house for practically everything, and everyone had to obey. This concerned cleanliness, organization, meal times, television viewing times, and much more. Everything had to be done as Derek ordered. The curtains in the house always had to be closed. When Shelley woke up earlier than him, she would go to the living room and open the curtains to let in light, but as soon as Derek woke up, he would go and close them again. Additionally, Derek began expressing dissatisfaction over any reason and arguing about minor things. He no longer allowed his son to play in the backyard, so the child could only play inside the house. Derek also compiled a sort of menu with all the types of dishes he liked most, and his mother had to cook them when he chose, regardless of the day or time. He controlled grocery shopping, even though he didn't work to help the family. After finishing high school, Macy got a job, and the only time Derek allowed her to leave the house was during work hours. She had a set time to leave and a set time to return. Derek calculated her schedule based on the route she had to take from home to work and from work to home. He knew exactly what time she left work and when she should arrive home. If Macy was late even by a minute, Derek would argue with her when she came home. Shelley tried to calm the situation when this happened, but Derek told her not to interfere. Because of all this, Shelley, who had been happy about her son's improved behavior, began to feel depressed when she realized he was getting worse. Shelley turned to alcohol for comfort, something she had struggled with in the past. She succumbed to addiction again in an attempt to feel better and escape her reality. At this time, Derek was 19 years old, and he was no longer satisfied with simply imposing his will. He began saying disturbing things that made everyone feel anxious. One night, Shelley went to the kitchen to get water from the refrigerator and found Derek sitting at the table cleaning an AK-47 rifle. Shelley had no idea how Derek had gotten the weapon and was so frightened that she froze and didn't know how to react. When Shelley turned her back and began walking to another room in the house, Derek pointed the weapon at her and asked if she was afraid of him. Shelley stood motionless, unable to answer. Then she went to her room, and after this incident, Shelley spent most of her time locked in her room, drinking. Because of her fear of her own son, she began to avoid him, and her room became her refuge. She only went out to work, and whenever she encountered Derek, she said just enough not to upset him. Derek noticed that his mother had begun spending more time in her room and avoiding him. From time to time, he would come to her room and knock on the door to ask questions about something in the house. This was just a way to show that he was there, that he was nearby, almost as if he was asserting his dominance. One day, Shelley became ill and needed hospitalization for gallbladder removal surgery. When she returned home, she noticed that Lucy, the family dog, was missing. She asked Derek where Lucy was, and Derek said that she had run out into the street and was hit by a car. Shelley, frightened, asked where the dog was now, and Derek replied that she had died and that he had disposed of her body. The problem was that Lucy didn't have a habit of running out into the street, as Derek claimed. Shelley knew that her son was lying and probably had something to do with the dog's disappearance, but she was too afraid to confront him and pretended to believe his story. At this time, Derek began using violence against Macy, his girlfriend. This was the last straw for Macy, who had already had enough of the life she was leading with Derek. The young woman decided it was time to leave. On her 18th birthday, Macy took advantage of Derek not being home, gathered all her belongings, and left. She decided to leave Gabriel, their son, because she believed that if she took the boy, Derek would go to great lengths to find him and would probably harm her out of revenge. Macy had already spoken with Shelley, who supported her decision. When Derek came home and Shelley told him that Macy had left, he simply sat down and remained silent, showing no emotions. Shelley expected a completely different reaction, but Derek just sat motionless, looking at her. Then he stood up, lowered his head, and went to his room. On September 7th, 2012, Shelley was leaving for work when she found Derek in the living room with the curtains closed, pacing back and forth. Derek was talking to himself and repeating the same phrase over and over. "Gabriel will never call another man daddy." Shelley asked her son what was going on, but Derek ignored her and continued repeating the phrase. Noticing that she was late for work, Shelley decided to leave Derek as he was and went to work. On September 8th, Shelley woke up early, as usual, and went to work. After work, she went to her regular Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. When the meeting ended, Shelley said goodbye to the people at the meeting and headed home. Then the tragic events described at the beginning of our narrative occurred. The next morning, around 5 o'clock, Derek checked into a hotel several miles from his home. Gabriel, his son, was with him, and Derek appeared completely indifferent. Due to the police search for the child, the hotel employee recognized Derek but was smart enough to pretend not to know anything, serving Derek as usual. When Derek went to his room with his son, the employee called the police and made a report. The police arrived within minutes, arrested Derek, who didn't resist, and they managed to rescue Gabriel. The child was fine and had no injuries. Derek was still in the same clothes he had been wearing when the crime occurred. There was even Macy's blood on his shoes, and the bloodstains found in the house matched the prints of those same shoes. This was important evidence against him. In the car Derek had fled in, which belonged to his mother, police found the murder weapon, a kitchen knife. Later, Derek was brought in for questioning and given the right to call his mother. During the call, Derek apologizes, saying he never wanted everything to end this way. Shelley responds that she loves him, and Derek says he loves her too. This was the first time in his life that Derek told his mother he loved her. "Hello, Mom. It's me. I'm sorry for all of this. I didn't want anything to happen this way. I'm really very sorry. All I can say is that I still very much regret the whole situation. I can't do anything about it now. I would give anything to go back in time, but that's not how life works. I love you too. Please take good care of my child." From the moment of Derek's arrest, Shelley was thinking about helping him. She didn't want her son to spend the rest of his life in prison, so she was ready to testify in his favor in court. However, Derek never stood trial, as he accepted a plea deal offered by the prosecution, in which he pleaded guilty to the crime against Macy. As a result, in 2012, Derek Lietz was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after serving 40 years of his sentence. Macy's funeral was held a few days after her death in a ceremony full of sorrow and anger. After everything that happened, Shelley no longer wanted to live in her house due to the terrible memories, so she decided to move. According to sources, she was granted custody of her grandson and now lives in a secluded, isolated place where people don't know her story. In her statement, Shelley said that she is raising her grandson completely differently than she raised Derek, as she doesn't want her grandson to be like his father. She also said that she feels guilty about what happened to Macy and will do everything possible to ensure Gabriel's story is completely different. There is no information on whether Shelley takes her grandson to visit his father in prison, but it is known that Derek is in a maximum security prison in the state of Wisconsin and will likely only leave there at an advanced age. Derek Lietz's story is not just a crime chronicle, it's a narrative about the consequences of improper upbringing and ignoring warning signs. From early childhood, Derek exhibited signs of behavioral deviations that gradually worsened due to the absence of proper boundaries and consistent parenting. Shelley, driven by maternal love and fear of losing her son after his serious illness in infancy, unwittingly created conditions in which Derek's destructive character traits flourished. Her inability to establish boundaries and consistently apply discipline led to Derek not developing the necessary social skills and emotional stability. Robert's attempt to introduce structure and rules into Derek's life, although correct, came too late and met resistance not only from Derek, but also from his mother, who undermined her husband's efforts by secretly indulging her son's whims. The tragic death of Macy and the trauma inflicted on little Gabriel, who will grow up without a mother and with a father in prison, remind us of how important it is to recognize and respond to troubling behavioral patterns in a timely manner. This is a story not only about a crime, but also about how it could have been prevented if various support systems, family, education, psychological help, had worked properly. Ultimately, this story serves as a reminder to parents, educators, and society as a whole about the need to find a balance between love and discipline, support, and setting boundaries. True parental love lies not in giving a child everything they want, but in giving them what they truly need for healthy emotional and social development.